Afternoon. Dwayne here, Dry Creek Wrangler School. Back down in Caldwell after a week on the mountain with my boys. It's August 7th. We just got back down here yesterday and been trying to catching stuff up and had a real good visit up there. Had my three sons and we met at the Salmon River Lodge way up north of Salmon. And my son is a packer outfitter up there for the Salmon River Lodge, and so they graciously allowed us to take enough animals, pack animals and horses, and go up on the mountains. And we did some trail clearing for them and camped out up there and had a grand time. And so now we're back out. Jesse, he's the one that works up there. His GPS said we did 36 miles total up there, and we went from, I think, about 4,000 feet altitude where the lodge was, and we climbed up to over 8,000 feet. Camped out. Our main camp was at 7,800 feet on a little mountain lake tucked back up in there, and it was a grand time. Picked this up today. You guys are going to be asking. It's my first one of these. It's a Padron 4000 series, and so far, I just got it lit, but I'm liking it pretty good. I want to talk to you about something a little bit different, okay? Now, let me say before I begin, there's a little bit of points. I'm going to reference a couple things in the Bible, just a couple verses. Now, I know some folks get a little squeamish and they kind of tighten up about that, but let me ask you before we begin to just hold on and listen to me. I'm not going to be preaching at you, all right? That's not what this is, but there's a very interesting concept and a thought that I think you might find interesting. I just want you to hear me out and chew on it and think about it, okay? There's a verse of scripture in the book of Genesis. Now just hear me and take it for what it's worth, okay? When God is creating man, he says, let us make man in our image. Now it speaks in the plural there. God, there's one God, says, let us make man in our image. And he speaks in the plural. So I believe that when God made man in his image, that means God is a trinity, and he made man a trinity too. What does this have to do with anything? Just trust me. If you watch any of my videos, just trust me. It's going to be interesting, okay? And I'm not going to be hammering on you. I think man, and when I speak throughout this video of man, this applies to women. This is humankind, okay? We're a trinity. We're made up of three parts: body, soul, and spirit. And a lot of times, many times, when our life gets out of balance, when we feel out of balance, when we feel incomplete, it's because we've ignored a third of ourself or 2/3 of ourself, and we aren't complete in our trinity. Now, what does that mean? Let me illustrate it like this. Our second night up there, our first night up on the mountain, we traveled, for the first day, we traveled several hours and went way up to a camp, a nice camp, called Fern Creek. And we camped out at Fern Creek. It was a long trip up. We went way up there. Got up next morning, had a nice leisurely breakfast, had like 3 pots of coffee between the 4 of us, and just sat around and had a good time. Then we packed everything up, packed all the mannies up, and packed all the mules and horses, and we had 11 animals between the 4 of us. And we went up to a place called, I think it's Basin Lake. So we got to Basin Lake, and we got there, and we rolled into camp, little lake there up in the trees, beautiful spot. So when we rolled in, we unpacked all the packs, undid the saddles and took them off, and led all the mules and horses down to the little mountain lake there to drink, and came in and took them and secured them, put them up, set our camp up, and built a fire and made supper, and sat around, had coffee. The boys all smoked pipes, and I had a good cigar. Rolled out our bedrolls and went to bed. Now I lay there in my bedroll, looking up, straight up through the trees at the stars, and for a moment there, well, for the evening, all three of my boxes were checked. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, physically, the body, that's how you relate to yourself. So I had physically worked. We had gathered up the horses. We had packed the horses. We gathered up camp. We had ridden for several miles through the trees, had worked, had had a good day, had had a good supper, had had coffee, had a good cigar. And I was just physically complete. It was a good day. It was a good day for a man to say, I accomplished something today that not every man can do or will ever do. And then I lay there on my back and I look straight up, and I'm surrounded by straight, tall pine trees going straight up, pointing to the night sky. And I hear the sound just sighing softly through the pine trees. And I can hear the fire back behind me over there just kind of still crackling and popping, and the murmur of my sons back there just talking amongst themselves while they're getting their bedrolls and everything ready. And then as I lay there, I watched the stars come out, and there's no light pollution up there. So the stars, the sky was clear, and it was just brilliant and bright. And it was just the beauty of everything just fed my soul. I mean, just to be up there, it just fed my soul. And then I lay there and I got to thinking, God has really given me a lot. I mean, he has really blessed. And so as I looked up at the stars and I looked at the beauty and I listened to the wind sighing through the trees, I just lay there and thanked God. I thanked him for 3 tall, strong sons who were men, but who were honest, who are hardworking, who are contributing to society, men that I'm proud of. I thanked him. I lay there and I thought about it, and I thanked him for my 4 beautiful daughters. They're beautiful, they're smart, they're sweet. How often do you find 4 daughters these days that are successful and sweet and smart and beautiful? And then I thought of my wife of 31 years back home holding the fort down as she's done for so many years, that helped add to all that special, what was needed in raising these kids, and my health and the life that God has given me. And so in that moment, physically, my body, my soul, and my spirit was just all complete. I mean, I felt like a balanced, whole man. A lot of times we go through life, and some people, they ignore the physical. They ignore the physical. Some men, some young men these days, they spend their life sitting on the couch, playing video games, scrolling on their phone. They don't know what it is to go out and work and to cut firewood, to be able to change a tire, to be able to go out and sweat, to be able to fix a leaky roof, to mow the yard, to go hunting, to go fishing, to be able to just go out and do something. And ladies these days, they don't know how to do that either. And I'm not doing the whole gender thing. You got to do one or the other. But to be able to cook a really good complete meal, to be able to hunt, ladies, to be able to plant a garden, to be able to raise flowers, to be able to physically do, we're not complete, and we feel squishy. We feel soggy. We feel blobby. We feel like those people on that spaceship in that cartoon Wall-E. Just somebody does everything for us. And if the whole world were to fall apart, people would be helpless. They can't do anything for themselves. They're not complete physically. The soul. The soul is how you react to the world around you. That's where art comes in. Listen, I'm going to speak back to the guys. Guys, read some poetry. Listen to some classical music. Check out some paintings. There's more to life than work and beer and women. There is, okay? There's a beauty out there that feeds your soul. And if we don't touch, if we don't plug into the soul and we don't plug into the beauty of what's out there, then we're just a lug. You know, we're a drone. We're plowing through the dirt and we're not looking up at the sky above us. We don't stop and listen to the cicadas in the trees. We don't watch the butterflies that are around. It don't make you a sissy. All right. I don't think there's anybody out there that knows me that would consider me to be a sissy. All right. But I remember one time had about a 3-day layover in Sydney, Australia. Jesse was with me at the time. And I went to their big museum of art there in Sydney, Australia. And I saw a painting. This is what I'm talking about, okay? I saw a painting on the wall and it just stopped me in my tracks. And there's no reason why it should have. And I went back and I looked at it and I just was mesmerized by it. And I remember it to this day, and that's been years and years ago. And the painting is not some world famous Mona Lisa or something like that. I think it was called A Widower and His Daughter. And it was just a very masculine looking man in full Victorian, it was back in the Victorian area, with a little girl that he was doting on. It was just him and that little girl, and it was a widower and his daughter, I think's the name of the painting. But it just reached down inside and grabbed me. When was the last time a song or a painting or a poem or something you saw in nature just reached down and plucked the string of your soul? You need that. You need that. And it's a big thing today to deny the spiritual. All right? But if we don't understand that there's something bigger, something greater, something wiser than we are, something beyond us, then there's a whole chunk of our soul that will never be complete. We need some thankfulness in our life, and we need humility in our life. And you will not get gratitude and humility except from something that's bigger and greater than you are. In the Bible again, God calls David. You remember, if you've had any Sunday school at all, you remember David and Goliath? David grows up to become the king of Israel. David wrote the book of Psalms, which is a book full of just poetry and music. He's the only man in Scripture that God called a man after my own heart. Now think about that. David wasn't a perfect man. He committed some pretty bad sins. Okay? He did some pretty bad stuff. And he repented of it, and God forgave him. But he's the only man in Scripture. Now, there's other men God called. He called Moses his friend. But David, he said, that's a man after my own heart. David was a great warrior. He was very renowned in battle. He was also a man who played musical instruments and wrote poetry and wrote great, beautiful songs and painted pictures with words. But he was a man who worshiped God. From the very core of his being. He was the man in Scripture who was most in touch with all three parts, his trinity that God had created, body, soul, and spirit. We have a very unbalanced world today, full of imbalanced people. So it's a concept I know that maybe might be new to some of you, but just sit down and take thought sometimes. And you feel like there's a big hole in your life. You feel like you're not getting, and I don't mean getting as in money and jobs and stuff, but you're not achieving what you were intended to achieve. You may be only a third of a person. You may be only 2/3 of a person. There may be an entire swath of you that you've never considered, that you have abandoned, and that you have left off. Religious people do the same thing. All right? Religious people who have no sense of soul, who have no sense of the physical. That's where you get these fat, loud, out-of-shape religious people who, if they thought they could get away with it legally, would burn you at the stake because you don't believe what they believe. they're just as guilty. They're only a third of a person. They are not in touch with the beauty that God has created, and they're not in touch with the physical man that God created, or woman that he intends them to be. If we get out of balance in any area, we can become a very ugly, unhappy, misshapen soul. All right. So this week on the mountain was a trip of a lifetime for me. It was a great trip, and there was a moment in time up there where I felt that I had reached that point where I was in balance. My body was tired and satisfied and happy. My soul was full to overflowing with the beauty and the joy that was around me. And all I could do was turn around and humbly give thanks and gratitude to the God who had made it all possible. So, just want to give you something to think about. I hope it helps you. If you'll just do me a favor, click like, if anything, on this video if you like it. Now, don't lie. If you don't like it, don't click like. Click that share button and send it to somebody if you think of somebody that this might encourage a little bit and help. And just stay tuned. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate everybody sticking around. And I just want to help you out. I just want you to live your best life. All right? So this is Dwayne, and we'll catch you guys later.